Yes, well, good evening, everyone, to the Balie and also to the people watching online. My name is Meert Vrees and I'll be your moderator for this evening. Welcome to Healthy Habits and Why We Don't Have Them. So tonight we will engage in a conversation about our body, our biology, and what it means and what it takes to be healthy and also mentally healthy in current day society, and also whether this is an individual responsibility or a political responsibility. And we will do this following the release of Organisch. I don't think you have missed it, the new book by Giulia Enders. And Giulia Enders has written extensively on the human biology, and she's very well known for her book on the gut, which in Dutch was called De Charme van je Darmen. And I think there's nobody who can talk so passionate about poo as Giulia Enders. But tonight she will do something else. She will talk, of course, about her new book, which takes a more holistic approach. And she will show how interconnected our organs are with the outer world we live in, and how big the influence of our organs are in relation to our mental state and well-being. So in a few moments, she will give a lecture. Oh, hello. Followed by a short Q&A. And then we will invite nutrition scientist and lifestyle coach Inge van der Wurff to the table to discuss the relationship between a healthy lifestyle and mental well-being. And last but definitely not least, we will invite journalist Teun van der Keuken to discuss whether, I already said, a healthy lifestyle is really most much an individual choice or more a responsibility of society, and thereby also a political responsibility. But what I always do is that does it work? Yeah. I really like to know who we have in the audience, what brought you on this Friday night to the Balie to discuss these matters. So I always like to hear, what you are expecting, what do you hope to expect? Can I ask you what you hope to expect from this evening?
Yeah, sure. I don't have real expectations, but I want to live more healthy and, yeah.
You want to live more healthy, yeah. Is there something you would like to learn tonight?
Not specifically. I just remember I'm also German, and I remember we all had the book back in the days. Like, it was very well known. So I'm very curious to hear about the new book of Giulia Enders.
So what we will talk about, for example, is that Giulia will argue that we really have to listen to our body. So now I'm curious, who in the audience, please raise your hands, finds it easy to listen to his or her body? Please raise your hand. Yeah, like 10-15%. Yeah, I'm kind of happy with that result, because I find it sometimes very confusing to listen to my body, and we will definitely talk more about that. And who thinks that a healthy lifestyle is mostly an individual responsibility? Please raise your hand. Yeah, that's more. So that's really more. Whoa, people are really like, I don't know. Well, I think it was like about 50%, and I also feel that I'm really curious after the evening, if people have made up their minds. So that's that for now. I really would like to introduce Giulia Enders. She has her medical degree from the University in Frankfurt am Main. She's a resident doctor for international medicine and there it comes, gastroenterology. Yeah. And, well, as I already said, her book, Darm with Charm, it has won several awards. We just heard it was translated in like 40 languages. So give her a big applause. Giulia Enders.
Hello. I was told earlier this evening that I would get a catheter, and I was really scared. But apparently that's the name for this object here, so just in case you also didn't know, I'll spare you the embarrassment in the future. So, hi. We'll talk a little bit about habits, healthy lifestyle, and I was given the opportunity to explain a bit the direction of where I'm coming from to this whole topic. And I think we have this here. I've been writing a book called Organisch in the last 4 years. And I did this to look at the body a bit differently. And when we talk about habits and lifestyle, maybe we sometimes have this perspective that we think the brain has a command and says, go to the gym or eat this and that. And I wanted to try a different route, going together or cooperating with the body. And tonight I want to briefly, like for the next 15 minutes or so, tell you why and how. And the question why can be answered with a shorter answer and a little bit more elaborated answer. And the short answer, I'm really glad, has a graphic that works perfectly well for that, which is this one. And this is from a study that was published last summer. And it was a research team that conducted experiments on how our environment and the way we grow up shapes our perception, how we see and live in the world. And they showed this graphic to people and asked them, what do you see? And then they had a result very clear, which was that people who are born in Western industrialized countries, like probably most of us here tonight, they will look at this and they will say, squares, right? I mean, who here saw squares? I know I did. So I think we're about pretty much those 82% that they had in their study. And if they would show this very same graphic, and I mean, it does make sense. You know, we have square cell phones, square houses, square pieces of paper, and so on and so on. And when they ask the same thing about the same graphic to people who live more closely in nature, and this was, for example, a tribe from Namibia that lives also in round huts, they would look at the exact same graphic and say, clear as day, circles. And you need to sometimes, for us European, like westernized people, you need to really circle all the circles until you can see it. And in that moment you realize, or maybe you realize, I don't know, but the way that this graphic is actually produced is by having lines, then cutting out circles and turning them by 90 degrees. So it's circles. And the short answer to the question, why this book, hence, is so that we in our perception are able to see a bit more of the round spots, because they are there, actually. We just sometimes miss them. And for the more elaborated answer, I would say this sort of sums up to the sentence, I think we need a physical perspective more often. And why I say this and call it organisch or round or however, this has really 3 parts. It's what I experienced doing my work in the hospital as a doctor. It's also things that I then sort of like noticed more and more in my personal life, and some of the thoughts I had about the world that we live in that suddenly made me think we need more of a physical perspective. And in the hospital I started, and I picked one that was just focused on the gut, because that's really all I wanted to do. I didn't care for the other organs. I wanted to just do gut morning, day, night, and that's it. And then when I got there, I had to realize after some time, this is not such a good idea, because actually everything in the body is connected. We had patients with an irritable bowel syndrome that would sleep really bad, so I would have to get into the brain and sleep. And then a colleague of mine would recognize that when there were days where the air pollution was really bad, we would have more people coming in with belly aches. And we looked it up. There was actually already a connection described in studies. So I had to look up the lungs and air pollution. And suddenly I realized, okay, I need a physical perspective even when I just want to do gut. And also there were these times when I would sit on my desk and listen to my patients for hours and hours and hours talking about their body. And after a bit of time, it struck me the words that they would use. And I realized that I did the same thing. It was oftentimes words that were heavily influenced by technical terms, economic terms, mechanistic terms. And I had people saying like, oh, I need to function for the family, I'm broken here, you know, or this needs to be running again, or something, like all these terms. And I especially remember one case where I had a woman that lost a pregnancy very late during the pregnancy, and she then came in with unclear belly aches. And of course, after all the significant tests were run, we realized it was not so unclear. She was heavily traumatized, and it was just a horrible event. And she knew this, but also she had so dominantly in her mind these sentences, I need to function again for my work, for my colleagues. I need to get fit again. I need to have a bounce back body. And it was so difficult for her to let go of these concepts that have been put in her head by like social media and technical ways at looking at herself, like now a broken, non-functioning thing, that it really was heavily and difficult for the healing process. And I realized we need a few more counterweights. We need a few more alternatives, what words to use and what perspectives to use to look at our own body. And my patients made me realize that I had these perspectives oftentimes in my own life, and usually those were always situations when I thought I should react a certain way, or feel a certain way, or function a certain way, but I just didn't. And those, I think one of the key moments was when my grandma died, and I had been extremely close with her. I basically grew up with her and my mom, and I always thought when she dies, I don't know what I'll be something, but not myself. And then when it happened, or, I had these pictures in mind from Hollywood movies, like the black-dressed widow that cries in the soup or something. And then when it happened, I just didn't feel anything. I was just numb. And I went to work, and I did all I had to do there. And I went back home, and I slept, and I did the same the next day. And I realized, what's wrong with me, basically? Something is so weird with me, but I can't put any name to it, and I can't cry. It's not available for me. And I would read psychological books on it, but it was also cognitive, and stress reaction, blah, blah, blah. It didn't do anything for me. And then a few weeks later, I had a patient that had a wound healing disorder, so the wound didn't heal properly. And I read a little bit about skin and wounds, and suddenly I sat on my desk and I cried like a baby. And it was a moment where I realized there was this physical, bodily process that was sort of like guiding me through what I was experiencing. I could relate to something like tissue being robbed from the body and then blood just forming this numb crust where you look at it for a few days and you're like, oh, there's really nothing happening, is it? But underneath it, there's a lot happening. And I still remember this illustration in the book where you would see cells coming, rearranging, getting rid of like the things that had been damaged, pulling in cells that would help repair. And this suddenly became an orientation. It was a complex bodily process. It was not a Hollywood movie or how I should feel or look. It was this thing where I could grab and hold on to and suddenly allow myself to be sad, because I thought, I think something like that is happening to me, and now I can actually have it happen to me. And I realized in other areas like work or how we're supposed to feel happy in certain situations, and maybe we don't, after the birth of a child, or when I was really successful with my first book, I thought, this is supposed to feel 100% great, right? I like writing, I like medicines, and I have this medical bestseller. And I was sitting at this dinner and I realized it's nice, but it's like 30% nice and not 100%. And why am I not like purely happy now that I've made this? And in that moment, for example, I thought, why don't I just like look at the actual physical thing? Look at the cells that create feelings of being content or happy. Does it make sense for them to reward me for just like something I've achieved 1 year ago? No, not so much actually. So like finding suddenly these ways of questions to answer. When books tell you, be happy with this, social media tells you that, but no one actually looks at the structure that does that and asks, is that even reasonable, Or things like working, sitting 1 hour more at the desk and then being a bit more inspired by how the muscle does it, when strength and producing force is not only tied to doing 1 more hour, but sometimes also how well did you use relaxation times in between training, how was the dynamic, did you use the right angle, things like that. So that made me also work a bit more dynamic, and then, surprise, sometimes just get further better by seeing myself more like a muscle and less like a machine. And I think sometimes these situations when life isn't how we think it should be, people push it into an area of, it's your own responsibility. If you don't feel that way, you're damaged or broken or not right. But those situations oftentimes are just complex. And so the body is complex, and it can be a nice orientation doing that. And the very last, the world is something where I think nobody puts it as nicely as this organizational psychologist. His name is Peter Kruse, sadly passed already. And he said we're at a turning point in history now, where the world is going from being complicated to complex. And what that means is, for example, complicated would be like a Switch watch. If you open it, you see all these little wheels turning, and there's so many of them, so you don't really know how it works, but you understand the principle. It's turning like this, so this turns like that. Same goes for like companies. Even if they have like 70,000 employees, there's this hierarchy, and the one tells the boss, and he tells her boss, and so on. And that's sort of how it works, even though you can't see all these different people. And complex is what we have now, and more, this digitally connected, dynamic world where everything can suddenly influence anything and you can't really know in advance. We have a CEO of a company who at a Coldplay concert hugs someone from behind, and suddenly, next day, whole world changes, and somewhere in Germany they'll talk during the coffee break about it. And this was not foreseeable. And all these complex changes to this growing dynamic world we have are, I think, making people scared. And I think this leads, partly at least, to all these movements where people want to go back, where they want to go backwards and have the simple good things from other times when there was no migration or no this and that and so on. And I think the simple truth is we never can go back. We tried it once, going from antique to medieval ages. It worked a few hundred years, but it never works finally. We'll always continue going forward. So I think going from a complicated to a complex world, the body is a wonderful reference because it is super complex and it just goes and is alive and it holds. And that is because it is based on a few reality-bound, purpose-bound principles. And sometimes looking at them and learning from them, instead of trying to put something mechanical over it, is very valuable. How? Simply, that's just short notice. I've taken five of the most important human needs. So we have physical needs, and breathing being the most important, so the lungs are representative for that. First chapter, lung and physical needs. The second one, I looked at safety, and of course, who's better to represent and tell us something about it than the immune system, sorry. And then for relationships, human interaction, I took the skin because it isolates us from the world, separates us, but also makes us feel. There's touch, but also wounds and healing. And then the muscles for being effective, being strong, getting something done, achieving something. And the brain for all the over-sensual rest. And I wanted to do it in a bit different way, so it's not like a school book. So I put a person in front of each chapter that taught me something about these topics. And a nice example is the first chapter with my great-grandma, who was called Müdi, which translates to sleepy. And I took her because I didn't like the lungs very much, to be honest, at first. I thought they were really passive and more like they always do what the muscles around them tell them to, sort of. And are really soft. When you poke in them, they just go like blub, blub, blub. And it was a bit difficult for me to respect them, to be honest. I thought they're a bit more like a tread wife or so. And it made me think about my great-grandma, because she was always described as this very soft, very good-willing, good-hearted lady, bit passive, to be honest. But then also she made everything possible by adjusting to all the people around her. And she did want things. She did get them in her very own way, soft and not like a pushy businessman, but she was put at a central part of our family and influenced so many people after her. And sometimes I feel like we value these societal things, like being pushy, getting things done, and then we overlook things that are also very important and valuable. And our body sometimes shows us this value, like with the lungs. They're put at the most important need, is this soft, mushy tissue. But without it, we couldn't breathe 20,000 times a day, because it would just be way too hard if the lungs weren't so soft and accommodating. So that's a bit of an example, and I do that with the other organs in order to make you get to know an organ instead of, having notes about it. And in that way, from the lungs up to the brain, I hope that there comes something from it that is less telling the body what to do, in habits or in a healthy lifestyle, but also really learning from the body how it's actually put together, so that we can do these things in cooperation rather than in a dictator style. So let's see, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Giulia. Have a seat. So, if I understood correctly, you can use that mic, yeah.
Seems like a soccer press conference.
Yeah, this.
The team did great.
Yeah.
We did everything we were supposed to. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, let's go. Organisch. Now, so I had this question, but it's because when I saw the PowerPoint, I just saw the images, and I had no idea, of course, what you meant by those. So, as question, my first question was a little bit like, yeah, who do you mean with we when you say like the times we live in? You know, the way our organs respond to the time we live in. Listening to your talk and seeing the images. Is the we, as I understand correctly, people that are living like in highly industrialized places? Is that what you mean with we?
Well, when I write this, it's basically the voice in my head thinking out loud of the things that I just experience daily, right? So when I was sitting in the hospital and I realized, oh, they are thinking of their body like a machine. And then I realized, well, I guess I am too. So it's just basically me thinking that.
Yeah, so it's really the people around you, but then and then bigger, because you know probably this book also goes lots of places. But it is really important, you know, right, where we live. Can you give more examples, or maybe you have thoughts on if you wouldn't live, you know, in this highly industrialized city? What would be your language talking about your body?
I just read this recently. That's why it immediately pops up now that you're asking this. There was a study, and I think it was a Finnish team, and they were research. It was a popular science magazine, so I think it's accurate, but just revealing the source here. It was researching a tribe that had no records of depression or anxiety. And usually when you have a few documented things, then you see, oh, they have some images of a monster, so it could be anxiety, or they have stories of a sad woman, so there could have been depression, but there was really none of that. And they wanted to find possible causes why this was lacking. Also, when they went there were no signs, but it's a small group, but still. And the only thing they could come up with, or that they found could be associated with it, was that they had a ritual in the evening where everyone was sitting around the fire, and especially the kids had to tell the things that they were most horribly scared or worried about. And then everyone would tell these things, and then when the common mood would sort of calm down, then only could everyone go to bed. And I found this super interesting. I don't know if you would do more study on that, or if this was deepened, or not just a field study with associations, how that would turn out. But this is a very different way of dealing and integrating things like fear. And for example, when we have this approach of thinking, oh, I'm a machine, and when the machine isn't courageous and forward moving, then the machine is broken, then you would not so much like to give this so much space at your evening ritual, right?
Yeah.
But when you say,
a waste of time.
Yeah, because you see it as a problem of the machine, right?
Yeah.
And when we have this push to the side like that, it seems to not do us so good. Yeah. It seems to not be the best way to deal with these things. Of course, we shouldn't feed fear in an unproductive or an unnice way. See, I'm using productive. I slip into the words too. I'm not a perfect guru. I'm just saying get aware of it sometimes. But if you have it more as this is a part of us being alive, having fears, giving them some room, maybe there's something in them to learn, we'll sleep over it, and just integrating it more. It seemed for them to really have a good effect.
Yeah, because when you also talk about, or when we talk about healthy habits, you're not only talking about what you eat or how much you exercise, but also habits of integrating feelings into your
letting
life.
letting go of bad habits. And with that, for example, I'm a very firm believer that in order to let go a habit, you really first and foremost have to understand why it is a wonderful try of solving something. Because all the bad habits are usually always a very great, ambitious try of the body to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just are a bit knick-knack, so you can talk to your body about that. But for example, when you look at smoking, you're just like, oh, it's a bad habit. But really, what is it? It's giving your body some time during a stressful work day, during traveling at the airport, during a party when you've maybe be a bit socially overstimulated. It always gives you the right to go outside and have a minute for yourself and do breath work. Do like a perfect technique of breath work at a cool party. Like, this is genius, to be honest. And sadly, it is connected to cancerous things. And sadly, it is connected to nicotine, which will get you hooked. But there's an aspect of it that is super genius and intelligent. And respecting that part of it, I think, is essential to then dealing with it in a different way.
Yeah. So if you wanted to quit smoking, you really should consider, how will I take this minute for myself in a different way? You would.
And there was a study, I think it was the first one of its kind in that size and everything, that breathing techniques can really help ending your smoking habit, because they lessen an aspect of it that gets you like nervous or really unwell, the de-stressing, for example, and the stabilizing of the mood. And so taking one genius aspect of those habits, at least with you, can be an approach. I'm not saying this is the perfect 100% recipe, but it's a part of not looking down on your body, but understanding it and then going from there.
Yeah. I was also thinking, because your brains are part of your body. And when we talk about listening to our bodies, I find it very difficult whether that also means listening to your brain, because I feel often my brain and my body are not, wanting the same for myself. Yeah, for example, like, or like if I go to the gym, sometimes maybe my body would say like, oh, you really should stop, you have all these small pains. And then with my brain, I say like, go through it. Then it's actually better, because I improved my health. Or my brain says when I'm sad, like, if you eat the chocolate, it will really make you feel better, And then maybe, so how does that work?
Well, an important aspect to that is that we always see the brain as the brain when it really is not. And it's also not the one boss that commands everything. It is first and foremost made up out of many different cells, all having to get along. And then it is also made up of different parts. So some parts of the brain a bit lower, a bit more down back here, they have been formed out the way that they look now, way back. And then others a little later. And then the very frontal part that we appropriate like conscious thinking to and saying, oh, chocolate is bad or gym is good, that was the youngest of them all. And it actually does make a lot amount of mistakes. We always think it's the smartest because we're conscious with it, so we're a bit biased. But it really makes a lot of mistakes compared to the other ones. And it learns from that, which is nice, which is the nice thing about it. But, so it does have a lower rank and hierarchy. And other parts of the brain will think very differently about the gym, because they'll be, for example, responsible for energy consumption and energy balance. And they'll say, if I don't get anything for using up my costly energy, that is nothing for me. So the brain in itself has to argue with these other parts, but they're less conscious and they're less modifiable, because it is a safety mechanism for the brain to have areas that are very expertise. For example, energy homeostasis has been around for millions of years.
But that makes it more complex, because then I even don't know to listen to what part of my brain.
How to address them. And maybe they're right. Like, look at brain parts wanting to eat and become very fat. There are brain parts that are very interested in that and have high ambition and having lots of fat. They are so not stupid. Until 70 years ago, we had hunger and famine regularly. How stupid would the brain be to turn this off just because right now it seems like everything's safe, but we don't know. So of course this part has the main speak when it's been right for 100,000 years before that. 70 years, that is nothing. So this is, I think, the difficulty you're describing, that there's different brain parts, and the one that lives consciously in this now very changed, drastically different world has his opinions, but the other ones
also. I don't think you made it easier, but more complex. We live in complex times, as you said. I'm also thinking...
No, but we can go there again. There's probably a different part that you would like an answer to, right?
Well, I think this will also come back maybe a bit later in the talk,
sure. Okay.
with when it comes to like individual responsibility and how that works and free choice.
Let me just maybe for that part say there is totally a way for these different parts of the brain to cooperate better. And we see this, for example, very well with the area of emotional intelligence. Because people will say, oh, I'm angry, so I feel like slapping someone. So anger is a stupid emotion, is what they'll say. And that, for example, is completely not understanding your body, and because of that, not cooperating with it good or better. Because if you would understand anger, you would understand, oh, the emotion, the underlying thing, the state of your body is just giving you energy. So it builds up your heart rate, it tenses your muscle, it gives you glucose in the bloodstream, so you'll have energy. But the conscious, limited mind, the conscious one says, oh, I've learned, or my typical reflex is to slap someone. But that is a stupid idea, because all the body is saying is, I give you energy. You can become smarter. And this is what emotional intelligence is about. Noticing, this is the emotion when my body finds something or my brain parts find something so important to stand up for myself that it actually gives me energy for that. So how can I use this energy? Do I write the email right away, or do I write a smarter email later? Do I use this energy to go jogging afterwards? You can do everything. It's just an offering of energy. And we see this a lot with emotional intelligence when people say, oh, is it so good to listen to the body? People get so hypochondriac and anxious when they listen too much to their body. With emotional intelligence, it's a perfect example to show, no, it's absolutely about understanding it better. When people become better at naming their emotions even, they'll have better relationships, better job status, they'll have better health, and then becoming better at dealing with the emotions. Improve this further, and then they, at a very later step, they'll become better at helping others with their emotions, because and so on and so on. And you see that the emotional intelligence is much more important for life satisfaction than cognitive intelligence. So this is an example of actually becoming needing time to invest this in cooperation.
Well, it's actually also a little bit the same with the smoking. It's like, what is the smoking giving me?
Yeah.
To be aware of that, and then thinking, what is anger giving me, and what is it telling me? But now I'm thinking, you're a doctor, so a lot of people that come to you, they have complaints, and often there are complaints about pain. And I was really wondering how this works with, listening to your body. What is it telling you? As a doctor, also in relation to medication. I thought, let's make this personal. Because I had chronic migraine for 12 years. And I tried everything, and people would tell me also but migraine is also really trying to tell you something, and it made me really angry. And I tried everything, and then since a couple of years, there's finally a medicine that really helps, how do you say voorkomen in Dutch? To prevent it. So I'm after a lot of things I was allowed, and since I'm taking it, I never had migraine. So for me, I get really sensitive when doctors even would tell you well, what does your body wants to tell you with this pain? So how would you respond to that?
There's two aspects. One aspect is medicine and doctors describing something as idiopathic as long as they just don't know how it happens.
What is idiopathic?
That's when they say, oh, there's no physical reason, so it's all in your head.
Yeah.
So this is annoying, and this was one of the reasons why I actually chose the hospital that I worked at, was because they focus on an irritable bowel syndrome, which is always described as, well, it's in the head of people. But there was already, doctors were still saying that broadly, but there was already so much data for changes on the nerve level, on the microbiome level, on the mucus level. So it was not all in the head, but the doctors want to sometimes push it there. Like society wants to push...
Because they didn't know how to cure it.
Yeah, because they're also a bit scared of not being perfect. So they say, well, better it's that you're not perfect, It's a better solution for me. So I think this is one aspect. And then I really don't like the aspect to... say, oh, when you've had a bad relationship with your mother, you will probably get breast cancer on this side or something. There is approaches like that, and I think this is this is way too simple. Never have I seen a body work that simple. A body going like, oh, the mother, then I'll just make the cancer here. This is really not, and it's unfair, of course, especially with those heavy diseases to put that together. And then there's also an area which I find important, and I find important to understand it, which is, again, how things in the body are connected. So there sometimes is a connection of you feeling very stressed, tensing up your muscles, and then, for example, having muscle-related headaches, which is not migraine necessarily, but for some people, there is just this cause. The stupid boss stresses them out, they tense their muscles, they have the headache in the evening. So there is a connection of mental state, of thinking about things, of having fear that will influence your body and your organs. So that is also not to be debated away and saying, oh, nothing is in the head. So I think all these aspects are fair, existing at the same time.
Yeah.
And when it comes to pain and the body making mistakes, you have to also say, I'm not an advocate saying the body is just smart and perfect all the time. The body is human. Humans make mistakes, the body makes mistakes. And some of them, cancer for example, are horrible, horrible bad mistakes. And some humans make horrible, horrible, so there will be fault. Being alive is not possible without fault. We came here because of fault, it will always be a part. So randomness and faultiness is just part of it. So when that happens, and for example, we have a pain that doesn't make sense, but it happens. An arm is amputated, but we feel it and it hurts horrible or something. Then I'm not saying this is a smart pain all the time. All I'm really saying is there can be better ways of working with it or getting on its level and finding solutions from here than whiplashing it. And there will be these cases where people just live on pain medication constantly. And in modern guidelines, we do not want this to happen. So it's not the right way to just press it all down and say, it's just a stupid body, so I'll quiet it, and that's it. So this is all the levels and nuances to that, I think.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for this answer. Let's invite our second guest. That is Inge van der Wurff. She studied nutrition and health at Wageningen University. She teaches now at the Open University and conducts research on the relationship between nutrition, lifestyle, and mental health. And in 2025, she published the book Eet jezelf gelukkig. Eat yourself to happiness. I think it would be translated.
Yes.
Welcome, Inge. To start, you've done extensive research on the relationship between lifestyle and mental health, and then especially depression and anxiety, as I understood.
Yes.
So, what are the most important connections between these two?
That's a very big question, of which you could write a book. Okay. I think it's important to realize, that's also why I wrote the book, that there is a connection between our lifestyle and our mental health, because mostly if we think about lifestyle, we think of physical health problems. Like everybody knows that when we eat unhealthy, the chances of getting, for example, cancer or maybe cardiovascular diseases increases, but this relationship between lifestyle and mental health and how we feel and our mood, that's not something that most people are aware of. And I think it is a very important thing to be aware of, because it's all fun and nice that if I eat healthy today, I'll reduce my chances of getting cancer in 50 years. But it's not something where people base their choices on. I base my choices on how they make me feel in the here and now. So that's why I think it's very important that people have this realization that what we eat or how we move or how we sleep or our stress levels are related to how we feel in the here and now. And there's a lot of research showing that eating healthy, especially the Mediterranean diet, having enough physical activity, sleeping well, that this is related to both a reduction in the risk of depression and anxiety, and also, for example, ADHD and other mental health illnesses, but also our mood and our mental well-being and our happiness.
Because is it a risk is it a reduction in the risk of not getting a depression? Mm-hmm. Or is it when you already suffer from a depression, a way to deal better with the depression?
I like this question because it's actually both. So we know that we can reduce, so for healthy people, we can reduce the risk that they will develop this depression or anxiety or other mental health disorders. We know that people who have these disorders and they are being put on either a diet or a physical activity regimen, that they reduce their symptoms. Mm-hmm. And we also know that for healthy people who have a healthy lifestyle, that their mental well-being improves.
And how would you? What is your mental well-being? Is just your overall feeling about?
Yeah, so mental health is really like symptoms, like being having depressive symptoms or anxiety symptoms, while mental well-being is more the positive side, so feeling happy, positive.
Are there also, like, because we've touched upon just slightly already on depression or anxiety, mm-hmm. are there also like mental health issues like borderline or schizophrenia, which has no relation to food or lifestyle at all?
When I started, I thought like no way that things like autism or schizophrenia are related to lifestyle, but we're seeing more and more that even these. Like we call anxiety and depression, we call them common mental disorders, and they're a bit less bad than, say, for example, schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, as in schizophrenia and bipolar disorder are way more, they have a way bigger impact on somebody's life than, say, anxiety or depression. But nowadays there are studies coming mm-hmm. that show that diet can be used for things like schizophrenia.
Yeah, sorry for introducing this term. Yeah,
and bipolar disorder, and also, but then we also go into like the area of, for example, the ketogenic diet. So for the people who aren't aware, ketogenic diet is a diet that is extremely high in fat, which is used mostly for people with epilepsy. Mm-hmm. But we are seeing some trials being done that this is actually also very helpful for people with these very severe mental disorders.
And I think, doesn't it sometimes make you scratch your head when you look at hospitals where often, I can just talk for Germany, but the food is so bad.
Yeah,
it's like you would sometimes rather eat cardboard than whatever this is on the
I like the anecdote that when my grandfather was in the hospital, he would refuse the food, and my grandma would cook at home and bring the food to the hospital because he thought it was disgusting. Mm. And it's pathetic. You will get like the boiled potatoes with the boiled spinach and like.
I know this really is also an issue in the Netherlands. I also know there are some hospitals trying to do better.
Or also when people are prescribed medication, why couldn't they also be prescribed getting healthy food? Because especially when you're depressed, you don't have the energy to get up and make yourself healthy food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there is actually for physical activity that there are some like schemes where actually GPs, so huisartsen, can prescribe this physical activity. That's really interesting. And there are also there is a trial in The Hague now going on where they prescribe fruit and vegetables, and people get these boxes sent to their home. But it's specifically for, I think, diabetes. But this would be great for depression and anxiety as well.
At least looking into it, because of course all the other times industries are interested in people taking the medication they produce, so they'll finance these studies. But who finances those studies when they're in our common interest to make us feel better?
Yes. Well, there are.
I wanted to go a little bit to the because you were saying, I like the Mediterranean diet.
Yeah.
So is that what people eat in Italy, in Italy, Spain, and Portugal? And then I assume that the depression and anxiety levels are much lower there. Is that the conclusion, or how would I see this?
It's very interesting because actually the people in the Mediterranean countries don't eat Mediterranean anymore. Oh.
That's a sad conclusion.
So we love the.
Yeah.
What is a Mediterranean diet?
So the Mediterranean diet is the diet that people around the Mediterranean. So that also includes, for example, Morocco and Tunisia and Greece. These countries ate in the 50s and 60s of the last century. I always think that the fun part is that actually all traditional diets, so also, for example, the new Nordic diet or the Japanese diet, these have all the same basis. They're plant-based with a little bit of animal protein, a little bit of cheese or dairy added to it, but they are mostly plant-based, and we know that these plants are good for our body and are good for our mind.
Yeah, so that is... I just want to say, because it's like eat yourself to happiness. Mm-hmm. And then I was thinking, how do you define happiness? Because I know a lot of people, when they experience happiness, it's often not about a lot of plant-based products.
Yeah, I also thought when you were saying earlier, if I want to be happy, then I eat chocolate. And I guess that also links to what you were saying, the evolution. In the olden days, it was useful to eat, for example, chocolate, because it's high in calories, it's high in sugar, it's high in fat, the stuff that we used to need. So there are the brain mechanisms that guide us towards this fat and sugar-rich foods. And if we eat chocolate, then there will be a release of dopamine in the brain, the pleasure hormone, the hormone that's released when we're having sex, when we're gambling, when we're drinking. But in the long run, this will, this sugar and the saturated fatty acids are very detrimental to, for example, the gut microbiome, of which we know that this is related to our mental health.
Yeah,
there's actually a really nice study. Let me know if I'm breaking anything.
No, break in.
This was done by a friend of mine in Frankfurt, and she took people and gave them puddings. And one pudding was half sugar, half fat, so really the typical McDonald's style or whatever. Yeah? And the other one was very watery, starchy. And she would put them in imaging and show them different pictures, and then have them eat those puddings for 4 weeks, the one group having the high sugar, the other one not. And after 4 weeks, she would repeat the images and the scanning. And it would, and also do other tests, but it showed drastically that the dopamine response changed. So when the body knows, oh, this high caloric density I can get, it will change a threshold for having a good feeling. So what she could show was that people who had the high sugar pudding, after 4 weeks, if they saw an image of an apple, there was not much reaction. Yeah. And the other people, they saw an apple and they would go an apple. So a normal yay. Yeah. But so this was also applicable to other areas of life. This is why now there's all these studies on diabetes and depression, for example. Because when your brain knows, oh, I can get this much dopamine, then it will shut off the lesser dopamine release triggers. So a nice smile from someone who's coming across you in the supermarket won't do much more anymore. Yeah. So you get the rush, yes. And so the word happy is actually true, because that is associated with the rush and dopamine. But we forget about content. Yeah. I want to feel content. I don't want a rush and a rush and a rush, because that will just mean when I get up and I look outside and the weather is nice, I will still be able to go, aha, and not be I don't fucking care, give me a burger, So.
Yeah, and it's also very interesting, the study that you mentioned is
do you know it?
I know not this specific one, but I know that there have been similar studies. But it's also very interesting that now we have these ultra-processed foods, which are hyper-palatable. So they have this combination of sugar, fat, and salt, which releases even more dopamine. And then you even have people who get addicted to these ultra-processed foods, which actually means that the dopamine release is less, and they need to consume even more of these products to get this dopamine released.
So it's the casino of foods.
Yes, I like that.
Let's go back to the mental health issue, because there are a few things. There are huge waiting lists also for people, to actually see a psychiatrist, but also a psychologist. Yeah. So then I'm figuring you come to your main practitioner, I think you call it the huisarts in the Netherlands. What do you think the main practitioner should advise? Especially what you already said, when you're have feelings of anxiety or depression, it's not the best time in your life to have like this really, you know, lifestyle with a lot of cooking and exploring new foods and new recipes and going on. Yeah, what would you advise? Like,
I don't know whether I completely agree with you, because I was involved in a study with people with anxiety, and we actually sent them to a nutritionist and had this nutritionist work together with them to improve their diet. And actually the people who were participating in this trial, actually they were able to improve their diet, and they actually mentioned that they really loved it. And I think that's also like, I'm trained as a nutritionist, and I'm very like, these if you consume healthy food, then the inflammation will reduce, and blah blah blah, very body centered. But what I learned from this trial is that there was also a very strong psychological effect. Like if you're depressed or you have anxiety and you haven't cooked in a week, and you manage to just make like a very simple soup with some pre-cut vegetables from the supermarket, but you're managing to do this, then you also have like this dopamine release of being able to accomplish something. So there's also a very strong psychological factor, in having in taking steps in your lifestyle. And the same is true, for example, with physical activity. If you start with like a walk of 10 minutes and you're exhausted, and the next week you can do 15 minutes, that's also this dopamine release of like, I'm achieving something. So I do think that people, like not people with severe depression or anxiety, but like mild depression and anxiety can take steps. And I think this is also something to which GPs should mention this to their patients, because as I mentioned, a lot of people aren't aware that lifestyle can play a role in their mental health. Yeah.
But would you say that there could be ways to make this more of a communal thing? Because I oftentimes feel like there's these people that are sometimes, by the way we live, the modern circumstances, pulled down so much anxiety because they don't achieve this, it doesn't look like it. And now on top of that, they should cook and go to the gym. So sometimes I wonder, is there a way of make this more of a communal thing, as sometimes it was earlier when we had shared kitchens in houses, or when we had a pub where everyone would sort of have a psychologist at their side. So have it more like with a low threshold and more with everyone helping each other, not you having to do this, you know?
Yeah. I know of like a project in the northern Netherlands where they invite people to come to like a community center, and they will do like a food prep thingy in
for the week, basically.
Yes.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I love it. And they cook like 3 or 4 people pay like €5 or something. It's very cheap, and they will cook together like 3 or 4 meals, and everybody will get like a container with these meals to take home. So this is a very nice example of what you are mentioning. And then you have both the food and you have the community.
I already hear him mumble a bit on the first row, so maybe it's time to get him to the table. Teun van der Keuken, as I said, a journalist and program maker, and for many years he was the face of the television program De Keuringsdienst van Waarde. He published several books, but he's very well known for The Mens is een plofkip. I was like, if you go to the States or England, how are you going to translate this one? We don't know, no. The humans as battery chicken, something like that. And he just wrote Dieren zijn ook mensen. Teun van der Keuken.
And for a minute, otherwise they can't see my face, sorry.
Whoever prefers what, you know.
I heard so many things,
Good, I heard you. But I thought, Teun, because you also wrote this book, This Is Not a Diet Book, in which you tried several diets. And I was really wondering, listening to this, did you feel that all those different diets also had an influence on your mental health?
It definitely had, yes. So I did, like, in a year time, I did about 7 diets. And actually, a few of the aspects you mentioned happened because every time at the end, nearing the end of the diet, I felt really happy. I thought it was also like achieving things. I saw impact on my body. But every time then I did a sort of in-between period was okay. Then I started and I got really depressed at the beginning. I thought, oh, it's not working and I don't feel well and it has everything is changing in my body. And then after a while I got the hang of it again. And but it also really gave me the idea it doesn't make sense at all these diets.
Can I jump in exactly there? Would you say it took about 3 weeks until it worked?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because that is exactly the time that we see in all the studies for the microbiome and the metabolism to shift and adjust to the new diet.
Yeah.
So that is also when people eat lots of meat and then they suddenly have to go vegetarian. It's horrible in the first 3 weeks.
I think I did exactly that. Those two after each
horrible.
other. Yeah.
It's horrible because your body is actually lacking nutrients. So it's right to feel horrible because the bacteria, to get the nutrients out of this completely now different food, they'll have to get there and they have to change like a power dynamic, so to say. And that is a horrible time to go through.
And I think it maybe even took me a year to get the whole thing out of my system, my body.
So with what kind of, I don't know, do you feel that what you eat now has a positive effect on your health and mental health?
Yeah, which things?
Well, I turned sort of partly vegan.
Yeah.
Or almost vegan, and that is also quite difficult.
Yeah.
But in the book, I also did vegan, but then I thought I have to do it all natural. I didn't take any supplements, which was really bad. And now I do take the supplements, and then it goes much better. Yeah, yeah.
Do you sometimes crave meat?
Not meat, cheese.
Ah.
Yeah.
And what does his body tell him then?
Probably wants calcium. I would say. And then you take it maybe, huh?
I think I want fat.
Oh,
Yeah.
How do you get fat in the vegan diet then?
Don't know.
Oh, but there's like all kinds of vegan fat, no? Oil.
Yeah, olive oil and.
But it doesn't do the cheese.
No, but the thing is, I think
one's more saturated.
Because of course.
I don't know. I'm not a nutritionist.
No, but the thing
I
is,
don't think dopamine levels go very high with olive oil.
Of course, you have a biological approach, but there's also a cultural approach, I think. And we are, of course, really a cheese country. and when we go on holiday, a lot of people, when they come back, they crave like a bruine boterham, like a brown sandwich with a piece of cheese. And that is so ingrained in my whole history that's.
But would you then not do it? Is it okay to just then have some cheese?
Because what is horrible is fake cheese. It's awful. So my solution is that I told myself cheese doesn't exist. Yeah.
But it really does.
Does God exist? I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
How? Because you also written the mens is een plofkip with everything we put in our bodies. How does that relate to why we don't have healthy habits?
Now, what I found really interesting was the part where I found everything interesting, of course, but the part where you talk about the different parts of the brain. I talked to this Dutch doctor who helps children, obese children. He's called Felix Kreier, so he's originally German, and he's very well known in the Netherlands. And he wrote a book about the hamster in our brain, and basically that the hamster is basically that older part of the brain that says we need calories, we need to feed ourselves, and then you have the more rational say no, it's not good. But the first time he told me, I couldn't believe it. He said, we see a bar of a candy bar or so, and we immediately see a lot of calories, we want it. And you explained that was never a problem, till like 70 years ago, because there was not chocolate and French fries and or at every corner of this in every street. And now society is like this, and it doesn't only go for food; it also goes for exercise, because now exercise is part of a planning. It's not part of our lives. And someone pointed to me at a very interesting aspect. If you go to an office building, the first thing you see is the elevator, the lift.
And then you have to really
If you
look
want to
for
go
the
with the stairs, you have to try and find them. So
That's really fun because at my office, actually, you come across the stairs first, and if somebody takes the elevator, you're like, "What's wrong with you?"
So you see how you can also nudge people into good habits, and we have stress because we have to. So everything, the whole society, maybe I don't know. It's very popular now to say that's capitalism. I don't know if that is, but it's all not helping for our health.
And I also read that because we're all this time talking about chocolate, and that's also because almost
Very bad chocolate.
Because everyone in the audience, everyone knows somewhere that, you know, eating too much chocolate is really not good for you. But then I read that you say, well, 80% of what you buy in the supermarket is actually not good for your health.
Yes.
That was quite shocking. How did you come to this conclusion?
Well, I didn't come to the conclusion. That was a conclusion that real scientists already did.
Yeah.
I just copied that. And it's not. And it's also 80% of all the advertisement. And they know these people who work in advertisement, and also the people who produce the products. They know how our brain works. They know how our cravings work, and they know like food has the bliss point. Like if you put so much sugar in and just more and more and more, and then at a certain point you reach the level of extreme bliss, and then we are so happy, and then it's like drugs. And then they won't put more in it because then it goes down again. And they know this exactly, and they do tests, and they do brain scans. And we
but
are
80%. I'm just now walking through my supermarket, and I mean, this also means the bread, I guess. The like so many things. I think people buy with this idea that they are buying a nutritious meal.
The thing is, and then you see that like if you have, for instance, soups. A lot of soups are just like actually they are sort of hoe zeg je dat? Behang, lijm.
They're
like
starch
glue
mixed with water.
Yeah. So what they do, they put starch, and then you put it in. If you have a cup, you see like a pot of glue, and then they just add little bit of tomato paste, and then they think, but it really has to taste of tomato soup, so they have to put all sort of extra. Taste in it, and then they also have to put sugar in it because that has to mask other flavors. Because the main reason to put sugar in ingredients is to mask the taste of wet dog, and then you get this ultra processed food, which not always is bad, but often is bad because they take out proper ingredients and they replace them with artificial flavors.
I would at this point offer an advice to people, because all the things we say are true, right, but they're also a bit depressing.
Yeah.
That's my specialty.
And you're excellent at it.
Thank you.
But there is an aspect of it that tells us we can't trust our brains, right? Because we want all these shitty foods. We think that, great, we have the chips, we have the whatever else, snacks or candy, and we want more and more and more. So it makes us think we are not to trust, right? And I find this very important to go a little bit against that, because it puts us against ourselves.
Now, I want to put us against the companies
who
put us on us.
Absolutely, I understand that part. But what advice I would like to offer is when you have a food like this and you crave more and more and more, there is a sentence that helps me a lot, and it goes, if you want more and more of something, it's usually not what you need. And this describes that when food industry and food companies design food like this, so that just the dopamine cells fire. Dopamine are the ones that make you go more, more, more. And in earlier times, they would have the early humans walk to more and more and more and further, and then they would maybe find a cool new tree or a place to feed from. So the more made us go further. But then there's other cells that say, oh, wonderful, enough, thank you. For example, after a 2-hour hike, or I think you mentioned today you walked 25 kilometers, which is amazing. But after that, you won't go home and go on the couch and say, I would really like another 25 kilometers. That doesn't work, because in those moments, cells are activated that release endogenous opioids that say, fine, thank you very much. And when you have foods that do not activate those cells, you can learn to listen to that silence. And that is a tricky sentence, because how do you listen to silence? Only if you know of it. So that's where information comes in. If you eat something and you don't get the enough, then these cells are not activated. And I'll tell you something that is nice and not depressing. They are really, really hard to fool. They are almost never fooled. So if they don't jump on something, that's a good thing to listen to, because they know what the body...
It's funny, because one of the definitions of this highly processed food is food that is low in nutrition, and it's... you keep eating from it because it doesn't saturate. It doesn't.
The cells don't say, "Oh, thank you, new nutritions. Thank you very much, good," because they'll be like, "No, still not doing anything good for me. No, I'm not jumping on this." So nothing happens. So learning that silence is a very promising.
You use the word guru about yourself, jokingly, probably, but it sounds almost like you have to become a bit zen.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking when I think it's with so many things you say, it takes this, maybe it are just seconds, to just reflect, like, what do I need? And then I realized that this is something that completely, has been a way out of our way of thinking. Also, but we all described, with the brain parts and the advertisement, etc.
And the complex tailoring.
Yeah, and then I think you have also talked about the fact, like, we really need some regulations or political willpower to help us, and not doing exactly the opposite, actually, to make it even more difficult. Yeah. Like a sugar tax or something. And let me go a little bit further, because I understand that but then I was thinking that it's not only like a lack of political will, I think, but there's also this thing with people that they really do not want, like, political interference with what they put in their mouth.
Yeah,
and I was
one funny thing is that people allow sports at school, which is just as important as what you eat, but they don't. And the Netherlands is terrible in this, because in almost all countries they have warm lunches at school, and then you can also discuss how healthy they are or not. But in the Netherlands, people think if the school or the government is going to decide what we eat, that is really bad. But the best example in the world is Japan. There is hardly any obesitas, and that has obesity, and it has to do with the school system, where they have a professional nutritionist who has to study more after the normal, because they have, and then they go to school and they have the very healthy diet. And then also they teach the children about it. And if you ask a child there, a 12-year-old child, what is healthy food, they come with incredible answers. So I think we can, of course, say we don't want this food in our supermarket. We have to have regulation that we have at least 50% healthy, but I think schooling has also a part in that.
They do have a lot of anxiety and depression in Japan. They do not have obesity, but they do. So it's.
They also shame people with obesity in a very.
That's a very good system.
But no, it is true that it's important to have that in schools. I wanted to address another point.
Maybe when I said that was about the political, like people.
There's also. I listened to a talk of a professor from the Charité in Berlin, the university there, and he was an addiction specialist. And he said, to a certain degree, addiction has to be part of society, because we have now this lifestyle where we are sedentary. So we just live at one place. And we used to move and see new things every day. So the dopamine cells would do all this new stuff. And now we're just sitting there going to the same job back and forth. So So we have to have some substitute newness, which we don't have because we're at this place. And we now have substitute newness in like social media, scrolling through new things or having dopamine from fruits in the supermarket. So to a degree, this is our Lockmittel. To keep people at one place and to have a society that is sedentary. And then there's people straying from this where the addiction maybe meets some genes or some childhood where it just goes too far and really damages their
It
life.
sounds almost like a surrogate, like if you say the scrolling on the screens or this kind of food for.
Well, it is, again, somehow also a smart coping mechanism, not only a stupid one, but it still allows at the same time for us to ask ourselves, okay, so there is this need for newness, for reward, maybe for feeling good. Also, our work lives are oftentimes so that we do something the whole day and we don't even see what it does. Like we'll type in crunch in numbers, but we won't see anyone being helped by that. But it maybe does, but four more steps down the lane. So there's all these moments that have robbed us a little bit, the direct reward, the direct good feeling. So we substitute them to stay in this well put together society. So there's this aspect that I think also needs to be fairly addressed. Yeah. We can't just make everyone eat healthy, but then have a super boring day. You know.
No, but I remember, and now this is a little bit like old man talking, but like when I was young, you could also have French fries. But then we said in the family, okay, it's Friday, we're going to have them. You have to cycle 15 minutes, and then when you come back.
Really, you did that?
Yeah, no, really. No, but it was not like on every corner. Yeah. So then it's. I don't think it's. You should say we ban all this food totally. If you want it, you can get it, but you have to put some effort in it. But now,
I thought your parents said you have to cycle 15 minutes before.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, but I mean, so then you think it's a conscious decision. Now I'm going to eat this, and I want it. But now you don't even know you want it, and you walk on the streets and you see all.
And it's easier to eat this than anything else.
Yes.
Yeah. What we see also a lot, I know this is in the Netherlands, but I think it's a lot of different countries, is you see very difference that people in like high economic skills are a lot healthier than people, you know, in that earn very less. Yeah, because also I think even to have the time, you know, to think, what do I really need? Where can I go to have good food? The reward of cooking something, you know.
Mental space.
Mental space, yeah, that's the word. So then because I know somewhere you read like this, is not an elitist thing that I'm promoting, you know, which is only for the happy few. But somewhere I have this feeling like that a healthy lifestyle, like having real healthy habits, is something, you know, that is not for everyone right now in a society.
And I think that is where the politics needs to come and help people, because indeed it's way easier to have this unhealthy lifestyle. And there is also research that shows that ultra-processed food is like 40 to 50% cheaper than, for example, vegetables. And I also liked what Teun said, we need to start also in schools. And I know to promote my own provincie in Limburg, we have this program where children at school do get healthy meals in between at lunchtime. And we actually see that their school performance improves. We see less aggression at the playground. So we see a lot of these positive effects. And I think also that, the youth has the future. If we start with them, then we can...
And you often see that the children who learn it at school, they bring it to home and say, wow, we have this lovely food, can we try this? Yeah.
At school of my children, the children from the 8th group cook for the whole school a vegan meal every week. So it's I think that's, but this is not, you know, common everywhere. I think we should go to you and see whether you have questions for some of our speakers. Please raise your hand, and then the mic comes to you. Maybe you've heard something that you didn't quite understood, or if you, really in the back.
Hi, I'm very curious about what you said earlier in the beginning about the brain, because I've been sick for a while, being very tired every day. Walking for 5 minutes was impossible. But then I read about the mistakes of the brain and that you can retrain your brain in that it gives you a signal, I'm tired, but you're not tired, and then retraining it. And that totally worked for me. I could do everything in weeks, and I couldn't do anything for years. So I'm really interested, what did you study about this part also, like the mistakes in the brain and how you can work around that or with it, or how you can help yourself?
I will absolutely answer that, but first let me maybe ask the question that many might have. How did you train your brain? I'm just very curious.
Yeah, just telling your brain when it gives you the signal that you're tired.
But do you then just...
Literally speaking to it, saying, I'm not tired.
That is so nice. Yeah. So you're speaking to it. Yeah, I love that. There was also a study that people who talk loudly to themselves when they're stressed have a better immune system.
Really?
I've now started trying that. I'm getting used to that. But sorry. But then what I was looking at biases, for example. So we have over 200 biases, so common thinking mistakes that the brain and the conscious part especially does. And that is because when we look at these different brain areas, and they've been subsequently built in evolution, and as I said, some are older or formed out earlier and some later, they would take parts that were already there and then go from there. So the conscious mind uses certain nerve cell connections and ways of connecting them in loops or in different patterns that other brain areas have already developed before it. And because it does that, because it draws from its ancestors, there are some mistakes built in that. That is why 44.99 seems so much cheaper than 45, because there's this contrast building from visual cells, or why when we make decisions we use some calculations that a very old part in the brain for balance uses. So it's really borrowing these neural circuits and using them for modern areas of consciousness, but within them come some simplistic rules, so we make mistakes. So this is a part of the book, and then I also especially looked at sleep in that way, which made me understand sleep entirely new for one of the first times ever since university, because sleep is what it is, and the different sleep stages is those different parts of the brain taking over at different times. So it will happen like a Staffellauf, the sprinting, and then and this is actually what sleeping is, and falling asleep is giving these other area of the brain the power and saying, okay, I'm off, okay? Here, you do it now. And then sleep is a very great opportunity to get to know these different parts of the brain and how they actually work, what their moral is when they work. They have very different goals, and you can tell perfectly in the different sleep phases, because that's when they'll...
When I'm stressed, then I can fall asleep, but then sometimes I wake up at like 5 in the morning. Is that because of this?
When you get stressed?
When I'm stressed,
yeah.
when in a stressed period.
You mean the waking in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
This is discussed, differentiated, but I think an easy way is, well, you first need sleep to regenerate, so the deep sleep will replenish your cells, the damage that has been done during the day and filling up the storages and so on. So when you've had the sleep and then your nervous threshold to wake the brain is lowered because there's a feeling of threat, right? Stress means, oh, I have to be aware, maybe there's something coming. So the older parts of the brain always have to wake up the higher parts when they think it might be dangerous to just take care of my inner organs right now. There might be some threat. So they will lower the threshold of the nerves. So smaller stimuli can make it wake the higher parts up. And then also cortisol release. So stress hormone release, let's say you've been training the whole day to release stress hormones. Because of the thoughts you had, because of the workload, the whole day your body has amplified the genes for stress hormones. And then at 22 o'clock you say, but now be chilled like a Jamaican in a hangmat. Yeah. How is that supposed to work? The genetic profile is changed in the area of stress. So when in the night there's a little falling of blood sugar or your temperature is too high, stress hormones, and they're higher than usually. And this is a waking signal to the body, because that's actually usually a nice way of the body giving energy so you wake up and get out of bed. But if it happens too early and at the wrong moment, and also your threshold to wake the higher parts of the brain is lowered, then there you go. 5 o'clock,
This is a
so
well-known
good.
problem with like firemen, for instance.
Oh, because they really need the stress response to function, but then it's also not so nice.
Yeah.
Maybe when you say out loud to yourself that you're not a fireman, this will help you.
I'm often mistaken for one, but no.
Is there another question? Yeah, they're here.
Sorry, I drank all the water.
Oh, no, we have like...
Thank you very much. There's a question for Mirta and Teun, perhaps.
For me?
You spoke, yes,
Oh.
because you raised it.
Oh.
You mentioned the sugar tax, which I think is an incredibly regressive tax and probably impacts different parts of society in different ways. Can you talk about possible alternative solutions for societal political response to what we're talking about tonight?
Yeah, this was a question for Teun.
Well, we could ban all advertisement for unhealthy products. Huh? You think that would work? Yes.
They're trying it in England.
And then also because it's also online.
Well, it just started, so I don't think you can say that it doesn't work yet.
I sometimes wonder if there is also a problematic aspect of food industry or social media industry or whoever else knowing us better than we know ourselves. Yeah. So because you mentioned it earlier, you said they know us so well, but I think the problem really is they know us better than we know our bodies. And for example, when you know a little bit about marketing for Coca-Cola and McDonald's, it's usually always associated with feelings of loneliness and having no friends. So open a Coke with a friend. They have the Coca-Cola and they say, Sandra, Marcos, Manuela, talking to you like your name. And they have the whole commercial of it is tailored to this is a substitute for having a loving friend or a relationship to another human being. Yeah. And once you've understood this and understood this, how they work with your brain, when next time you see the bottle, it doesn't feel like a nice friend. It feels like a fuckhead fooling with you. Yeah. And that is a very different feeling. So I do feel like information and making yourself know yourself just as good as these companies is one approach. I'm not saying it's a perfect solution. There probably isn't, but it's one step that I find powerful.
Do you want to add something?
Sorry for the curse words sometimes when I'm passionate.
No, you're in the Netherlands, it's okay.
Oh, hello.
I think that legislation is very important, and you can also see, for example, with the sugar tax on sodas in Great Britain, and you see that these companies start reducing their sugar so they don't have to pay these taxes. So we see immense differences in the sugar amount all across the world in these sodas. So I do think that legislation can help in maybe not that people won't drink soda anymore, but these companies, they only think about their bottom line. So when they need to pay these extra taxes, they will start reducing this sugar.
Giulia, what do you think of Ozempic?
No, this is a whole other program. I'm sorry.
No, but the funny thing...
I had to think a little bit about it when she was talking about the brain, that because Ozempic does not, it limits the brain, right? Saying it makes the food noise stop, as Oprah explained to me. But I really think this is a bigger topic, or can you be really brief on this?
Actually, my old boss was one of the people who found this mechanism. So we've had long discussions about this. And I can't get into them. They're actually really too detailed. But I like this aspect that some people will experience something about their brain. And I think Oprah said this even, right? Yeah. I just saw this one thing where she said she always thought that she herself was just not disciplined enough. Yeah. All the people were able to lock away the food and be so disciplined, and she was too stupid. She could do all the things in her jobs, in her private life, but the food, she was not disciplined enough. And when she took Ozempic, she realized, oh no, this is how all the other people just felt. They didn't have this voice saying, go to the fridge, go to the fridge, go to the fridge. They didn't even have to have discipline because they just didn't have the voice. And that is something that I really like, experiencing your body in a way that suddenly you understand something.
Yeah. That's why 50% of the people here who said it's all your own responsibility were wrong.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Were you surprised by that 50% of the people said, well, it's...
it's just like the idea of the footprint. So the whole idea that it's all our own fault is actually an idea that is also put forward by the industry. So once we had a lot of people who were angry about the petrol industry, and they would demonstrate against the petrol industry and against the airliners. And then British Petrol said, well, we have had enough of this. We put $500 million into a campaign, and then they invented the footprint. So it means like
they invented the word, the idea of the footprint.
Is invented by British Petrol.
Okay.
And so it means that if someone goes and demonstrates against the oil industry, that someone else would say, how did you travel here, and so on, and make everyone personally responsible. And it's also, I think, because people want to feel responsible because they find it maybe a bit weak to blame other people, but actually they are not. And so every time I have a talk about this, a lot of people think
come up with this
that it's an individual responsibility.
I have time for one last question. Yeah. We make you move a lot because it's good for you.
Hi, I am very hooked on your advice that you gave about if you feel like you want more, then you probably don't need it. But I'm also thinking in the context of listening to your body, isn't there an aspect there that sometimes you need it, that's why you want it?
Definitely. And for example, that's a perfect example with food. But it's about the difference is the more. Like, let's say, with food, this is the perfect example, because you can crave food that your body wants certain minerals, nutritions, and then you'll get this craving. And then there's other foods that will make you have this more, can't stop. So eat the chips, and although you feel that your mouth is cracking up and it's really salty on your lips and you're kind of having this tummy feeling, you just cannot stop. But when you have the ache for, I really would want some beans again, and like put olive oil and garlic and some grapefruit juice and blah, blah, blah. So then this is an urge where you're like, I can have this, I really enjoy eating it, and I'm done now. So this is what I mean by that. And with food, you can learn to have healthy cravings. This is why it's so nice to have it in school, have healthy food in school, because then after the third or fourth time, or sometimes after having something for 3 weeks, then suddenly your body will go, I would really like to have some beans again. And then you can totally trust that. What body would want beans for no reason? Sounds crazy, but then it's not the same like can't stop. And I think if you really pay attention, it takes 2 or 3 meals and you totally know what I know. I mean, you totally understand the difference between these two. And then you can absolutely rely on that one feeling where you're like, would really like that, can. And you can totally tell when it's the other one. And we're all humans, we can have the chocolate, we can have the chips. It's not going to do horrible things. It's about the amount. And if we want to say, okay, I'll put a carrot in front of my nose and just walk in a circle because it's all right for tonight, do it. It doesn't do bad things, but it's really the amount and the times, how many times you do this. Yeah. Right? Or wouldn't you agree? Do you eat perfectly?
No.
Yeah, okay. See, okay. We've cleared that.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot, that's for sure. But I also was thinking with teaching kids things in school, I think it's also really important that we teach kids in school to listen to what do I need, what is my body telling us to take these, because we are telling us like, oh, that's a waste of time, I'm in a hurry, blah, 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 blah. So maybe we should also teach our children to take this time for introspection, although it sounds very counterintuitive if I think about my own kids to have introspection, but maybe in some way we could also integrate that.
But also literally take time to eat.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, in the Netherlands, a lot of people eat behind their computer and they eat it in within 20 minutes. And when I was filming with my crews, I also said, well, in the whole country said, we always take an hour lunch. And in the beginning said, this is ridiculous, we have to go, hurry. I say it's important. And then you have...
Probably also part of the Mediterranean diet, right?
It's a very important part of the Mediterranean diet.
Because you can really also calm down once a day, which is then again important for sleep. So
you have better conversations, and you're not only rushing.
Yeah. You're actually with each other. You don't need the cola instead of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I hope you can take some, take all the advice, but you can implement some so that when you say healthy habits, yeah, damn right, I have them. You can have that as an answer to this program title, because I do think all of us also already have some healthy habits. It's not, but maybe we can create more.
Oh, that would be an interesting thing. What are your healthy habits?
Yeah,
that you have
maybe we can tell each other at the bar.
Okay, sorry.
With some alcohol.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Teun, Inge, and Giulia, and thank you.
Yeah, signing.
And thank you, Mette.
Very important. The book of Giulia is for sale, and she will actually sign them. So, get your chance. Thank you.